Good afternoon. I promise to stick to the 15-minute time limit, so don't worry. First of all, thank you to the Pontifical Justice and Peace for giving me the opportunity to share the experiences of the Philippine Church, particularly on this issue of resource conflict. I came from Mindoro Island, that's me, one of the largest food-producing provinces in the Philippines. My island is also considered the 7th most important biodiversity hotspots in the whole world. As a Catholic priest, it is for my mission to serve the poor that I dedicate myself to development work and in promoting the rights of the marginalized. I work for the Mangyan Mission, the church-based ministry promoting the rights of the indigenous peoples. Our province in Mindoro, as you can see, is a very fragile ecosystem. The rate of degradation of forests in the island is alarming, as you can see in the picture. No need to discuss. But instead of restoring the balance, the forest ecosystems are now even more in danger of being denuded due to the threats posed by more than 92 mining applications all over the island of Mindoro. At a more advanced stage is the nickel project of Intex Resources, covering more than 10,000 hectares. Intex Resources is owned by a Norwegian company, but now being bought by the Chinese. You are right about the multipolarity. With the Philippine government, aggressively promoting mining in cahoots with the transnational mining companies, we in the local church were challenged to work with the indigenous communities to defend the land and the rights and to protect the critical watershed of the province. Clearly, conflict in access and control of resources is prominently at play in this given situation, with the powerful transnational companies colluding with the state machineries to gain dominance in contested mineral areas being claimed by the marginalized sectors of the indigenous communities. In this case, mining within the ancestral domain constitutes an outright land grabbing of the transnational corporations under the guise of bringing the so-called development. The Bishops' Conference of the Philippines expressed their concern about this alarming resource conflict in the context of extractive industry. We're talking about minerals, not oil and gas. The bishops highlighted the damaging and irreparable impacts on the indigenous communities, and I quote from the pastoral letter of the bishops. The promised economic benefits of mining by these transnational corporations are outweighed by the dislocation of communities, especially among our indigenous brothers and sisters, the risk to health and livelihood, and massive environmental damage. Mining areas remain among the poorest areas in the country. The cultural fabric of indigenous peoples is also being destroyed by the entry of mining corporations. That's from the Bishops' Conference. Development, when pursued primarily for financial benefits without real consideration of human and ecosystems' well-being, is a distorted version of development. The inherent defect is the notion that development is often equated with the delivery of much-needed investment, which is often achieved at the expense of social and ecological equilibrium. Using the lens of the Catholic social teachings, we in the Philippine Church see the need to go beyond the myopic monetary valuation of our natural resources to give weightier consideration to the demand for ecological protection, promotion of environmental justice, and promotion of the common good. It is in this context that the challenges of the teachings enunciated by the encyclical Pacem in Terris will be found relevant even after 50 years after its proclamation. One recurring theme in the encyclical is the admonition that the pursuit of peace should be grounded on justice and the common good, and this ethical obligation should be exercised in favor of the marginalized sector, as it explicitly states, and I quote from Pacem in Terris, "Considerations of justice and equity can at times demand that those in power pay more attention to the weaker members of society, since they are at a disadvantage when it comes to defending their own rights and asserting their legitimate interests. In support for this admonition, the Pacem in Terris quoted Pope Leo XII in his insistence that the state has obligation to seek the best interests of some, not only of some selected sector, but of all. The civil power must not be subservient to the advantage of any one individual or of some few persons, inasmuch as it was established for the common good of all. That's a direct quotation from Pacem in Terris. The teachings of Pacem in Terris with regard to peace in relation to justice and pursuit of common good, particularly of the poor and the vulnerable, is still very applicable in the context of resource conflict. In a parallel way, the Philippine Church challenges the government policy on mining on the ground of the requirement for justice and common good as enunciated in the Pacem in Terris. The Bishops' Conference categorically argues that the right of the people is inseparable from the right to sources of food and livelihood. Allowing the interests of big mining corporations to prevail over people's right to these resources amounts to violating the right to life. Furthermore, mining threatens people's health and environmental safety through the wanton dumping of waste and tailings in rivers and seas. That's a statement from the conference, Bishops' Conference. Hence, from the foregoing pastoral exhortations in Pacem in Terris and Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, it's clear to us that the interests of big mining corporations should not overpower the interests of the less dominant players in the political economy. The Church exhorts that state or civil authority must protect and take the side of the vulnerable and not be subservient to the dictate of the powerful corporate lobbyists. The requirement for social justice and common good must always prevail in cases of conflicting claims and priorities. In the era of globalization, the arena of resource conflict has become even more problematic. The transnational corporations have become very powerful players, doing intensified economic transactions that cross boundaries. The policy or investment decisions are being formulated primarily by market considerations and not by our own national interests. As in the case of the Philippines, we know this for a fact, as well as in other developing countries, national policies, like in the context of mining, are being framed or reformulated to suit the dictated interests of the mining corporations. The injustice in terms of access to resources has become even more pronounced and disturbing. The Catholic Bishops' Conference bewails the prevailing policy bias in the statement that they have in 2006. This is the National Conference stating the problem. The government mining policy is offering our lands to foreigners with liberal conditions while our people continue to grow in poverty. We stated that the adverse social impact of affected communities far outweigh the gains promised by the transnational mining corporations. Pacem in Terris offers an enduring reminder as to the just relationship that should prevail between the wealthier economies and the poorer developing countries. The encyclical categorically affirms that the smaller states, like the Philippines, have also the right of assuring their own economic development. It is only with the effective guaranteeing of these rights that smaller nations can fittingly promote the common good of all mankind, as well as the material welfare and cultural and spiritual progress of their own people. The teachings of Pacem in Terris, along with the similar pronouncement in the social teachings of the Church, inspired and guided the Church of Mindoro, my province, my diocese, in responding to the signs of the times and in seriously embracing our mission to pursue justice and common good in our effort to bring about genuine peace. We had our plenary council in the Philippines way back in 1991, and the council inspired us to work for the kind of peace that we need to pursue in the Philippine context. According to the Second Plenary Council, peace cannot be equated with the absence of war nor without a certain balance of power. Peace in the human heart and in the social order brought about by justice, requiring respect for human dignity and human rights, the promotion of common good by one and all, and the constant practice of solidarity. Hence, the Church work for peace is to be pursued in the arena of social order, in its dedication and unfailing commitment to promote justice and common good, and to protect human dignity and to bring about social transformation so that the kingdom of God that Jesus proclaimed will truly be a reality in our midst. And the Church in Mindoro led the journey towards promoting peace and justice in the context of environmental campaign. After more than a decade of sustained campaign, and after launching a hunger strike, with me included in the protest hunger strike, with visible support from the Church and the affected communities, particularly of the indigenous peoples, we succeeded in our effort to protect our ecology and to defend the rights of the indigenous peoples. The Mindoro experience was appreciated both in national and international fora, and had become a notable case exemplar in terms of its strategies for empowerment, ecological conservation, and human rights promotion of communities confronted with the threat of large-scale mining. The Mindoro campaign was given due recognition by Goldman Environmental Prize when I was chosen as one of the 6 awardees among grassroots environmental advocates globally. And when I received the prize, San Francisco and Washington, D.C., I proudly told our story and shared the basic principle guiding our campaign, which is but a reiteration of the Church's Catholic teachings. Protecting the rights of the poor must take precedence over corporate greed. Genuine development must prioritize the need to ensure ecological sustainability over market profitability. We should never sacrifice people and the environment for short-term benefit of the few. We are with you in solidarity for peace and environmental justice. You have the full version of my paper available at the desk at the back. Thank you.